Good morning, students. Today we are going to read about Hazrat Aisha Raziyallahu anha in the topic of Mothers of Faithful in Islamiyat. Normally, in the paper, the question comes in the form of a part, identify the names of the Mothers of the Faithful, in which we are required to write down the names of the Mothers of the Faithful, preferably in full. And B part comes in the form of write about the details of any of one or two Mothers of the Faithful. So because this is a personality, to get a grade, if we are required to write in detail, we have to write down the introduction, event of conversion or entry into Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's life, important services or events, and death, etc. So concentrate yourself. We are going to start now. Aisha was born in Mecca 8 to 9 years before Hijrat. Aisha, daughter of Abu Bakr and Zainab bin Amir, was married to Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam at a very young age. She was the only virgin wife of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, getting married when she was hardly 10 years old. However, their marital relations were established only after she had attained puberty in Medina. In second after Hijri, 624 AD, she began to live in the Prophet ﷺ's house, where he would sometimes give her company while she was playing with her toys. The Holy Prophet ﷺ had special love for Aisha and said, Aisha enjoys superiority over all other women. He ﷺ also nicknamed her Humaira. It is said that amongst the Mothers of the Faithful, she was the most learned. In the Battle of Uhud, she served water to the wounded and accompanied the Holy Prophet ﷺ in several battles as well as the farewell Hajj. Aisha had a good influence on the Holy Prophet ﷺ, who had been sad after the loss of his most favorite wife Khadija. Eventually, Aisha began to surpass the other wives in terms of closeness to the Prophet ﷺ. According to traditions, second wife of the Prophet ﷺ, Sauda bint Zama, had sacrificed her share of the time for Aisha after the Prophet ﷺ began to divide time equally for his wives. Aisha was scandalized by the leader of the hypocrites, Abdullah bin Ubay. Once she was accompanying the Prophet ﷺ on an expedition and got lost when she was busy in search of her lost necklace. She was escorted to Medina by a handsome young man who had accidentally spotted her while she sat with a worried look in the desert. The incident was exaggerated by the Abdullah bin Ubay and sowed seeds of doubts in the Prophet ﷺ's mind. However, there was no evidence against Aisha's conduct. Finally, divine intervention resolved the issue in her favor when the Prophet ﷺ received verses related to slander, libel, false accusation of the adultery against an innocent woman of Surah 24 Al-Nur. Those who brought forward the lie as a body, hypocrites among yourself, think it not to be an evil to you, On the contrary, it is good for you. To every man among them will come punishment of the sin that he earned, and to him who took on himself the lead among them will be a chastisement grievous. These verses defend innocence of the Aisha and condemn the practice of leveling false accusations. According to various historians, some other Quranic verses are also associated with Aisha. They include the words about tayammum or dry ablution that says, "And if you find no water, then take for yourselves clean sand, and with it rub your face and hands." Instructions regarding the start of the menstruation during the Hajj rituals are also linked with Aisha. Aisha, having a very sharp memory and keen interest in learning, learned a great deal of the teachings from the Prophet ﷺ. She memorized 2210 traditions, ahadith. She also bore hardships of hunger along with other wives of the Prophet ﷺ as he lived a life of the austerity and sacrifice for others. During the last days of his life, the Prophet ﷺ sought consent of other wives and shifted to Aisha's apartment and finally breathed his last in her arms. He is buried in her apartment. Aisha was just 18 when she became a widow. She is given the title Mothers of Faithful by the Quranic verse. The Holy Prophet ﷺ is closer to the believer than their own selves, and his wives are their mothers. Now we are going to read about the life of the Hazrat Aisha Raziyallahu Anha following the Holy Prophet ﷺ's death. Hazrat Aisha spent 48 years of her life as widow and remained dedicated to learning about the Quran, Hadith, and legal matters. She had memorized and narrated 2210 traditions and earned the rare status of being a mukhtar, one who has narrated hundreds of the traditions and thus became an authority on matters, especially those related to women. For example, matters related to tahara and matrimonial issues. Prominent companions used to consult her on various difficult issues. Musa bin Talha is reported to have remarked on her exceptional knowledge in these words: "I have not seen anyone more eloquent than Aisha." Even such muhaddathin as Abu Huraira, Abdullah bin Umar, and Abdullah bin Abbas sought her opinion on problems related to fiqh. Her relations with the first three caliphs remained cordial. Caliph Umar had doubled her stipend from 10,000 to 20,000 dirhams. Unfortunately, she developed differences with the fourth Caliph Ali and raised an army with the help of the Talha and Zubair. This led to the first civil war of the Islam, the Battle of the Camel, in 656 AD in Basra, Iraq. After this, she retired from politics and devoted her life to reading and writing. She died on 17th of Ramadan in 678 AD, 58 after Hijri, and was buried in Jannatul Baqi, Medina. She is given the title Mother of the Faithful by the Quranic verse. The Holy Prophet ﷺ is closer to the believers than their own selves, and his wives are their mothers. Now we are going to read another important part in this topic, that is importance of the Aisha for Prophet ﷺ. Aisha was married at the age of the 6 in the 10th year of the Holy Prophet ﷺ's mission. Soon after, the Holy Prophet ﷺ married Sauda, but the marriage was consummated in Medina 3 years later. She was the only maiden he married. Aisha spent her youthful years in Holy Prophet ﷺ's company and was able to get great spiritual benefit under the enlightened husband. The Holy Prophet ﷺ had special love for Aisha and said, Aisha enjoys superiority over all other women. In the Battle of Uhud, she served water to the wounded and accompanied the Holy Prophet ﷺ in several battles as well as the farewell Hajj. The Holy Prophet ﷺ spent the last days of his life in Aisha's apartment and finally died in her arms. He is buried in her apartment. Another important question in this topic can come in the form of the importance of Aisha for Muslims today. Aisha, as an exemplary wife, set living examples for Muslim wives for all the ages. She dedicated all her energies to console and comfort her husband. Muslim wives in the contemporary world should act devotedly to support their husbands. They should remain chaste, modest, and pure in order to strengthen the bond of the mutual love as it is declared in the Quran. They, your wives, are your garments, and you are their garments. Like Aisha, Muslim wives today should be caring towards their husband and be ready to suffer in hours of the hardship. This will prove their sincerity and selflessness and induce piety in them. Muslim wives should follow this Quranic verse to become trustworthy life partners. Just like Aisha, they should seek guidance and knowledge from their scholarly husbands. In testing times, they should retain their faith in God and wait for divine help, just as Aisha had done when she got implicated in a scandal. God surely fulfills his promise, and this Quranic verse endorses this. For devout men and women, for true men and women, for men and women who guard their chastity, for them God has prepared forgiveness and great reward. So this was the topic. Read it carefully again and make your notes. Thank you so much.